You two need to leave, right now, before I call the police. Hugh Brennan's hand was flat against Franklin Mercer's chest. Not a push. Worse than a push. A wall. Sir, we have a reservation. No, you don't. Not here. Not tonight. Not ever. 12 diners watched through candlelight and said nothing. What Hugh Brennan didn't know was that everything he had built over the past 9 years was about to collapse in exactly 72 hours. And it would start with the man standing in front of him, wearing a rain-spotted windbreaker and a pair of shoes that still had mud on the soles. 1 hour earlier, Franklin Mercer was standing in the kitchen of his brownstones on Astor Street, Lincoln Park, holding a cast-iron skillet that had belonged to his grandmother. He wasn't cooking. He was just holding it. It was the kind of thing he did sometimes when he was thinking. Janelle had stopped asking why a long time ago. The rain was coming in sideways off the lake. October in Chicago. The trees on the block had turned the color of rust and copper and fire, and the wind off Michigan kept ripping the leaves loose before anyone got a proper look at them. Janelle came down the stairs in a dress he hadn't seen before. Dark green, simple, no jewelry, except the thin gold chain she'd worn since her mother died. "You're not wearing that," she said. He looked down at himself. Khakis. A gray windbreaker. Running shoes with mud on the left toe from the dog walk that morning. "What's wrong with this?" "Franklin, it's our anniversary. I should be comfortable. It's La Maison Dorée. You should be dressed." He kissed her forehead. "I'm comfortable and dressed. Those aren't mutually exclusive." She gave him the look. The one that had been negotiating with him for 22 years. The one that said, "I love you, and you're impossible and fine, but I'm remembering this." They left the house at 7:15. The rain had softened into something that was almost mist. Frank opened the car door for Janelle, walked around to the driver's side, and stopped. Across the street, sitting under the awning of the dry cleaner that had closed 3 months ago, a woman in a thin jacket had her arms wrapped around a boy who couldn't have been more than 6. The boy was asleep. The woman was not. She was staring at the rain like it owed her something. Franklin looked at Janelle through the windshield. She was already looking at the woman. He crossed the street. He crouched down. The woman flinched. "I'm Franklin. My wife's in the car. Are you hungry?" The woman didn't answer right away. She pulled the boy closer. "There's a shelter on Halstead that has beds tonight," Franklin said. "I know the director. Her name is Patricia Langley. You tell her Franklin sent you, and she'll get you a room, not a cot." He pulled his wallet out. He put $300 in her hand. He did it the way his father had taught him to give money, folded small, passed low, no ceremony. "What's your name?" "Renee." "What's his name?" "That's my son, Caleb." "Renee, you're going to be all right tonight. I promise you that." The woman's chin trembled. She didn't cry. She nodded once. Franklin stood up. He walked back across the street. He got in the car. Janelle had already typed Patricia Langley's number into her phone and sent a text. She put her hand on his knee. They didn't talk about it. They didn't need to. They drove south on Clark, then east on Division, then north on Rush. The city was doing its Friday night thing. The restaurants along Rush Street were lit up warm against the gray October sky. Doormen in long coats. Couples ducking under umbrellas. The smell of garlic and butter and old money drifting through cracked windows. La Maison Dorée sat at the corner of Rush and Bellevue, between an art gallery and a private club that didn't have a sign on the door. The awning was slate blue. The brass fixtures on the door had been polished that morning. The window boxes were filled with white chrysanthemums that someone replaced every Wednesday. It was the kind of restaurant where the cheapest bottle of wine cost more than most people's car payments. The kind of place where senators had back tables and hedge fund managers had standing reservations, and the maitre d' knew your name before you said it, unless he decided not to. Franklin parked on the street. He fed the meter. Janelle took his arm as they walked to the door. The rain had picked up again. By the time they reached the entrance, the windbreaker was spotted dark across the shoulders, and Janelle's hair had curled at the temples, the way it always did in the wet. The hostess, a young woman in a black dress with her hair pinned tight, looked up from the reservation screen. Her smile was automatic. It lasted exactly as long as it took her eyes to travel from Franklin's mud-spotted running shoes to the windbreaker to his face. The smile recalibrated. It became something smaller. Something that asked a question without saying it out loud. Good evening. Do you have a reservation? Mercer. 7:45. The hostess looked at the screen. She looked at it for a long time. Longer than it takes to find a name that's already there. One moment, please. She disappeared through a door behind the host stand. She was gone for nearly 2 minutes. When she came back, she wasn't alone. Hugh Brennan had been the floor manager at La Maison Dorée for 9 years. He had started as a server, worked his way up through the bar, and been promoted to floor manager when the previous one retired to Scottsdale. He knew every regular by their drink order. He knew which tables the owner preferred for private parties. He knew, in his own carefully maintained opinion, which customers enhanced the atmosphere of the restaurant and which ones diminished it. He had a system. The system had never been written down, but every host and server on the floor understood it. Some customers got the window table. Some customers got the table by the kitchen. Some customers didn't get a table at all. He came through the door buttoning his jacket. He was a tall man with sandy hair and a jaw that looked like it had been set with a level. His eyes moved the way a camera moves, fast and mechanical, and they did what they always did when a new party was standing at the host stand. They inventoried windbreaker, running shoes, mud, no tie, no watch, no cufflinks, then up to the face, then the calculation. Good evening, folks. I'm Hugh, the floor manager. How can I help? It was the way he said folks. The same way a bank teller says it when they're about to deny the loan. Mercer, Franklin said again. 7:45. We have a reservation. Of course. Let me take a look. Hugh leaned over the screen, his eyebrows pulled together. He made a small noise with his tongue against his teeth. I'm sorry. I'm not seeing it. Could it be under another name? It's under Mercer. My assistant booked it 3 weeks ago. Hugh tapped the screen twice. He did not turn it so Franklin could see. I'm afraid we don't have anything for Mercer tonight. We're fully committed. Janelle glanced past Hugh's shoulder into the dining room. She counted 4 empty tables. One of them had a reserved card on it. 3 did not. There are open tables, she said. Those are held for our regular guests, ma'am. We keep them available in case they drop in. We are regular guests. My husband and I have dined here at least a dozen times. Hugh's smile did not change. It was a professional smile. It was the kind of smile that had a lock on the other side. I understand, and I apologize for the confusion, but I'm unable to seat you tonight without a confirmed reservation. Perhaps I could recommend somewhere else in the neighborhood? There's a very nice Thai place, 2 blocks east. A Thai place. He said it without blinking. Like it was a kindness. Franklin's voice stayed even. I'd like to speak with the general manager. I am the floor manager, sir. The general manager isn't in tonight. Then I'd like the name of whoever is above you. Hugh straightened. His chin lifted half an inch. The professional smile thinned into something harder. Sir, I've explained the situation. We don't have availability. I'm going to have to ask you to step aside so I can assist the guests behind you. There were no guests behind them. The entrance was empty. A couple at the nearest table, both in their 60s, white hair and matching cashmere, looked up from their wine. The woman leaned toward the man and whispered something. The man shook his head once and went back to his bread plate. A server named Gwen Halliday, 24 years old, 4 months into the job, paused near the bar with a tray of cocktails. She watched what was happening at the host's stand. She set the tray down on the bar. She did not pick it up again. We're not leaving, Janelle said. Her voice was quiet. We have a reservation, and we'd like to be seated. Hugh took a step forward. He lowered his voice, but not enough. Ma'am, I've been polite. I've offered alternatives. But this is a private establishment, and I have the right to refuse service to anyone I believe is not a fit for our dining room. Now, I need you both to step outside. Not a fit, he said it the way a man pulls a curtain. Slowly and with both hands. Franklin did not move. Say what you mean. Excuse me, you said we're not a fit. Say what you mean by that. Hugh's jaw worked. His eyes went to the dining room, then back to Franklin, then down to the windbreaker, then back up. He leaned in. Close enough that Franklin could smell the espresso on his breath and the starch in his collar. I mean, Hugh said, almost whispering. That you walked into a 3-Michelin-star restaurant, looking like you wandered in off Lower Wacker. I mean that my regulars pay $400 a plate, and they don't expect to sit next to someone who looks like he sleeps in his car. I mean that I've been doing this long enough to know who belongs in this room and who doesn't. And right now, you don't. The dining room had gone quiet. Not silent, but close. Forks had paused. Conversations had thinned to murmurs. A woman 3 tables deep had her phone below the table, angled toward the host stand. She wasn't recording. She was thinking about it. You two need to leave, right now. Before I call the police. Hugh's hand went flat against Franklin's chest. Franklin looked down at the hand. He looked up at Hugh. Remove your hand. Or what? Janelle stepped forward. Her hand reached for Franklin's arm. Hugh saw the movement. He caught her wrist. Not hard. Hard enough. His thumb pressed into the thin skin above her pulse. She pulled back. The sound her bracelet made against his fingers, the scrape of gold on skin, carried across 3 tables. Gwen Halliday made a noise from the bar. A sharp breath, almost a word. Don't, Hugh said to Franklin, still gripping the air where Janelle's wrist had been. Don't make this worse. Walk out that door, go home, and don't come back. He stepped around them and opened the front door. The October wind came in cold and carried the smell of wet pavement and exhaust, and the faintest sweetness from the flower shop next door. Franklin took Janelle's hand. He looked at her wrist. There was a red mark above the bracelet where Hugh's thumb had pressed. He did not raise his voice. He did not turn around. He walked through the door with his wife. Behind them, the dining room exhaled. 23 guests sat in the warm light. The couple in cashmere went back to their wine. The woman with the phone put it away. The server at the bar picked up her tray. Nobody stood up. Nobody said wait. Nobody said, are you okay? Nobody said that was wrong. Hugh Brennan smoothed his jacket. He nodded at the hostess. The hostess looked at her shoes. Reset the screen, he said. The Forresters are coming at 8:30. Give them the window. On the sidewalk, the rain had stopped. Franklin was standing under the awning. Janelle was beside him, rubbing her wrist. She hadn't cried. She wasn't going to cry. Okay, he said, after Tuesday. He nodded. He understood exactly what that meant. He took his phone from his jacket and scrolled to a contact. He pressed it. Arthur Pennington picked up on the first ring. Franklin, it's Friday. Tell me the girls are fine. The girls are fine. Art, I need you to do something tonight. The rain started again, soft. Janelle turned her face up to it and closed her eyes. La Maison Dorée. Corner of Rush and Bellevue. I want the building deed, the master lease, every vendor contract, and every security camera file from 6:30 this evening forward. Interior and exterior. Nobody at the restaurant touches anything. Arthur's voice changed. What happened? A man put his hands on Janelle. 4 seconds of silence. Tell me she's all right. She's standing. I'll have everything by morning. What else? Pull the restaurant's financials. Vendor invoices, payroll records, liquor purchase orders, everything for the last 12 months. I want a forensic accountant on it by Monday. The financials? Why? Franklin watched a taxi roll past, its tires hissing on the wet asphalt. Because a man who treats people the way he treated us tonight usually treats the books the same way. I've seen it before. Arthur wrote something down. Franklin could hear the pen through the phone. Tuesday morning. My office, Tuesday morning. He hung up. He put the phone in his pocket. He looked at his wife. Walk with me, he said. They walked north on Rush toward Division. Janelle didn't take his arm. She walked beside him, half a step behind, and her hand opened and closed at her side, like she was still feeling the place where Hugh's thumb had pressed. That same night, at 11:40, Hugh Brennan let himself into the back office of La Maison Dorée. The restaurant had closed an hour ago. The kitchen staff had gone home. The dishwashers had finished. The dining room was dark, except for the emergency lights near the exits. Hugh sat at the desk. He opened the top drawer. He pulled out a stack of invoices from the wine distributor, Laurent and Carey. He opened his laptop. He logged into the restaurant's accounting system. He entered 3 invoices, each one inflated by exactly $420 above the actual delivery cost. He had a separate account, held under a consulting LLC he'd set up 2 years ago, where the overcharges landed after the monthly reconciliation. The system was elegant. The system was patient. The system had netted him $114,000 in 22 months. He closed the laptop. He locked the drawer. He turned off the light. He drove home to his apartment in Wicker Park, poured himself 2 fingers of bourbon, and watched the last quarter of the Bulls game with his feet on the coffee table. He'd had a good night. He'd kept the dining room clean. He'd handled a situation at the door with the kind of authority that kept the room the way it was supposed to be. The Forresters had ordered 2 bottles of the Margot. Life was good. He didn't know that on the 40th floor of a glass tower in the Loop, a 63-year-old attorney with a yellow legal pad was already on his second phone call. One to a forensic accountant who worked weekends. One to the Cook County State's Attorney's Fraud Division. Hugh finished his bourbon. He rinsed the glass. He set his alarm for 6:30. He smiled at the ceiling. It was the last good night he was going to have for a very long time. Tuesday morning, 7:51. Hugh Brennan pulled his Audi into the employee lot behind the building. The sky over the lake was the hard blue you only get in Chicago in October when the wind scrubs everything clean. He whistled walking around to the front entrance. He had the kind of weekend behind him that makes a man feel settled. The Forresters had left a $1,200 tip on Friday. He'd moved another round of invoices through the system on Saturday. The Bears had beaten Green Bay on Sunday. Everything was where it was supposed to be. He reached the front door of La Maison Dorée. It was locked. He frowned. He checked his watch. He pressed his face against the glass. Inside, the lights were on. The tables were set, but the dining room was empty. A card on cream-colored stock was taped to the inside of the glass. All staff private dining room mandatory. 8:30 a.m. Hugh tapped the glass. After a moment, a security guard he'd never seen before unlocked the door. The man didn't smile. He didn't say good morning. Upstairs, Mr. Brennan. Hugh took the service elevator to the 3rd floor. The private dining room door was open. The long walnut table that usually held wine tastings and corporate dinners now held 2 men in dark suits. The older one had a legal pad and a pen that caught the light. The younger one had a laptop open and a leather folder closed. At the far end, Gwen Halliday was sitting with her hands folded in her lap. Her eyes were red. She didn't look up. The hostess from Friday night was seated beside her, staring at the table. "What is this?" Hugh said. Nobody answered. He sat down. He straightened his tie. He folded his arms. The door opened. Franklin Mercer walked in wearing a charcoal suit, white shirt, no tie. His shoes were polished. The windbreaker was gone. The running shoes were gone. Behind him, Janelle Mercer wore a slate-colored blazer and a silk blouse the color of winter sky. Pearl earrings. Her hair was pulled back. On her wrist, just visible below the cuff, the faint yellow of a fading bruise. Hugh's face did 3 things in 2 seconds. Recognition. Confusion. And then a sound from somewhere deep in his chest that he could not take back. A sound that every person at the table heard, and no one pretended they didn't. Franklin did not sit. He walked to the head of the table. He placed a leather folder in front of Hugh. He did not open it. "Mr. Brennan." Hugh did not answer. "Open it." Hugh opened it. The first page was the deed to the building at the corner of Rush and Bellevue. At the bottom, in black ink, Franklin J. Mercer, Managing Partner, Mercer Capital Group. Second page was the master lease for La Maison Dorée, same signature. The third page was the vendor services agreement for the restaurant security, maintenance, and infrastructure. Same signature. The fourth page was Hugh Brennan's own employment contract. Countersigned by a holding company that rolled up 2 layers into Mercer Capital Group. Hugh's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Franklin's voice was very quiet. "My wife and I own this building. My firm holds the lease for this restaurant. The maintenance company that keeps these lights on, the vendor that supplies the linens, the security firm whose cameras have been recording every room in this building since the day I bought it, all of them report to me. The take you cashed last Friday, Mr. Brennan, was signed by me." He paused. "You put your hand on my chest. A beat. You grabbed my wife's wrist. A beat. In our building. On our floor. In front of our tenants. A beat. Because I wore a windbreaker on a Friday night." Hugh's face had gone the color of raw dough. His hands were flat on the table. His fingers were trembling. Janelle spoke. She had not spoken since she walked into the room. Her voice was calm and measured, and carried the weight of 22 years of being looked at the way Hugh had looked at her on Friday. I didn't say anything that night because I wanted to see exactly who you are when you think no one important is watching. Now I know. Franklin closed the folder. You're done. Today. He turned to the hostess. And anyone who participated in turning away customers based on how they looked starts their review this afternoon. Hugh tried to speak. The first sound was not a word. Mr. Mercer, sir, I follow a dress code policy. I had no idea. You genuinely what? Franklin said. Hugh opened his mouth. He closed it. The honest answer would have ended him in the chair he was sitting in. And everyone in the room understood that. He stared at the wood grain. Arthur Pennington slid a single sheet of paper across the table. Termination notice. Cause. Physical contact with a patron, racially discriminatory conduct, violation of every service standard in the employee handbook. Hugh signed it. The pen shook. The signature came out crooked and small, like the handwriting of someone who had already started shrinking. A uniformed security officer was waiting in the hallway. He walked Hugh down to the basement. Hugh cleared his locker into a paper bag, a spare tie, a corkscrew, a framed photo of a boat he'd been saving up for. He carried the bag back up to the ground floor. The restaurant had opened for a private breakfast. 2 servers were setting tables. The sommelier was polishing glasses behind the bar. Gwen Halliday was standing near the host stand with her arms folded. Hugh walked past her. He stopped at the door. He turned. Gwen, you don't understand what? I understand exactly what happened, Gwen said. I watched it. I should have said something. That's on me. But what you did, that's all you. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Hugh pushed through the door. The October air hit him cold. The brass handle rattled against the frame. The door swung shut. Behind the glass, nobody moved. Nobody said goodbye. The story had turned inside out in 4 days, and the math was exactly the same. Upstairs, the hostess, a woman named Christine Adler, was still in her chair. She tried the only defense she had. Mr. Mercer, it happened so fast. I wasn't sure what to do. I've never been trained for. Janelle cut her off. You had a reservation on your screen with our name on it. You walked away from that screen and brought him to the door. You were trained. You chose. Christine looked at the table. She did not look up again. She was placed on unpaid leave pending review. When she was gone, Franklin turned to Arthur. I want an operational audit of every restaurant and retail tenant in our portfolio. Every vendor, every staffing agency, every front-of-house policy. 90 days. I'm reading every page. Arthur wrote it down. By noon, Gwen Halliday, on her own, posted a 40-second video to her Instagram from the sidewalk, outside the restaurant. She didn't name names. She didn't show faces. She looked into the camera and said, I watched a black couple get turned away from a restaurant they own because of how they were dressed. I was 3 feet away, and I didn't say a word. I'm saying it now. 900,000 views by midnight. By the Wednesday evening news, a reporter at WBBM had the story. A black couple refused service at a 3-star restaurant on Rush Street. A building owned, it turned out, by the husband. The couple who owned the building was the lead story by Thursday morning. The Tribune ran it in the Metro section by Friday. Franklin's communications team issued a 4-sentence statement. He wrote it himself on his phone in the back of a cab. This was wrong. It was handled. The work continues. We're not done. Wednesday afternoon, Arthur Pennington was waiting in his office when Franklin walked in with 2 cups of coffee and set one down without a word. Arthur slid a manila folder across the desk. You were right. Franklin opened it. 3 columns. 12 months of transactions. The irregularities were highlighted in yellow. Inflated vendor invoices. Duplicated charges from a wine distributor that didn't match delivery records. Consulting fees paid to an LLC that traced back to a personal bank account. The pattern was patient and practiced. A man who had been doing it long enough to stop being careful. Total over 22 months. $114,000. The employee who had processed every inflated invoice, who had sole access to the vendor payment system, who had set up the consulting LLC under his own middle name, Hugh Brennan. Franklin read it twice. He closed the folder. He looked out the window at the lake. By Thursday afternoon, Detective Reina Cortez of the Chicago Police Department's Financial Crimes Bureau had every camera angle from La Maison Dorée pulled, copied, and time-stamped. She was a compact woman in her early 40s, with short-cropped hair and reading glasses she only wore when she wanted someone to underestimate her. She'd been a detective for 14 years. She had grown up on the South Side. She had been followed by a store security guard at Marshall Field's when she was 15 years old, buying a birthday present for her mother with money she had earned babysitting. She had never forgotten it. She sat in a conference room at Area 3 headquarters and watched the back office footage frame by frame. The public story, the part Gwen had posted, the part WBBM had aired, ended at the brass door when Hugh pushed Franklin and Janelle onto the sidewalk. The back office camera kept rolling. 40 minutes after the restaurant closed, on Friday night, Hugh appeared in the hallway outside the office. He looked over his shoulder. He sat at the desk. He opened the drawer. He pulled out invoices. He opened the laptop. He typed for 11 minutes. He closed everything. He locked the drawer. Reina paused the footage. She rewound. She watched it again. Then she picked up her phone. Thursday, 6:22 in the morning. Hugh Brennan was arrested in the parking lot of his Wicker Park apartment as he was loading a gym bag into the trunk of his Audi. He was wearing workout clothes and wireless earbuds. He had a protein shake in his left hand. Reina read him his rights herself. 2 uniformed officers stood behind her. The charges: felony theft by deception, wire fraud, and falsifying business records. The Cook County State's attorney had also added a misdemeanor battery charge related to the grabbing of Janelle Mercer's wrist. After Gwen Halliday and 4 customers from Friday evening had walked into the station on their own and given sworn statements, Hugh was handcuffed. He was walked to the back of an unmarked sedan. Just before Reina closed the door, he looked at her and said, in a voice that tried to sound reasonable, "Detective, come on. You know how it works in this city. You walk into a place like that looking like they did. What am I supposed to think? I was protecting the brand." Reina didn't answer right away. She waited until he was seated. Then she leaned into the open door, one hand on the frame. "Protecting the brand from what, Mr. Brennan? From the man who signs your paycheck?" She closed the door. She did not look back. The drive to Central Booking took 24 minutes. Hugh did not say another word. Hugh's case did not go to trial. His attorney, a man who had handled his DUI 2 years prior, looked at the camera footage and the financial records and the witness statements and advised him to take the plea. He pleaded guilty to 1 count of theft by deception and 1 count of battery. The judge gave him 32 months in a state correctional facility, full restitution to La Maison Dorée, a permanent ban from holding a food service management license in the state of Illinois. At sentencing, the judge looked at Hugh over her reading glasses and spoke for 40 seconds. "Mr. Brennan, this was not a man who made a single bad judgment call on a Friday evening. This was a man who used the authority of his position to decide who deserved dignity and who didn't, and then, separately and simultaneously, stole from the people who trusted him. The harm you caused is not only financial. It is in the dining room. It is in the sidewalk outside. And it is in every person who will hesitate before walking through a door like that because of how you behaved on the other side of it." Hugh did not look up. Christine Adler was terminated the following week. The operational audit Franklin ordered became binding policy across every commercial tenant in his portfolio by February. Janelle, in the meantime, had done her own work. She pulled the restaurant's customer complaint file going back 4 years. She found 9 complaints, all from black patrons, all about Hugh, all marked resolved with no resolution attached. She called 3 of those customers herself. She told them who she was. She told them what had happened to her. She told them she would personally cover their legal fees if they wanted to file civil complaints. All 3 said yes. 6 months later, on a Friday evening in the spring, Franklin and Janelle Mercer walked back into La Maison Dorée. He was wearing the same gray windbreaker. She was wearing the same green dress. They had argued about it that morning, the way they argued about everything that didn't actually matter, and Janelle had won. The brass door opened with the same soft chime. The air still smelled like fresh bread and white wine and candle wax, Same tables, same soft light, different room. The new general manager, a woman named Loretta Voss, who had been brought in from a sister restaurant in New York, came around the host's stand and offered her hand. She greeted them by name. Not because she recognized the owners. Because every new hire at La Maison Dorée now completed a 2-day orientation that Gwen Halliday had helped design. And the first line in the handbook was simple. Every person who walks through that door is your guest until they tell you otherwise. Gwen was assistant general manager now. She had an office on the mezzanine, with a window that looked out over Rush Street. The first person she had hired into the new front-of-house training program was a quiet 20-year-old woman with a community college schedule and a 6-year-old son and a studio apartment on the north side that she could finally afford. Because a stranger had crouched down in the rain one October night and given her $300 and a name to call. Renee worked the host's stand on Friday evenings. Caleb stayed with a neighbor. She was saving for the spring semester. Franklin and Janelle sat at the window table. The one Hugh had kept empty for the people he thought deserved it. The server brought menus. The sommelier brought a bottle of the Margot without being asked. Janelle reached into her purse. She pulled out a small box-wrapped hamper. She set it in front of Franklin. He opened it. Inside was a watch. Not a Rolex. Not a Patek. A Hamilton. American-made. Steel case. Leather strap. Clean face. The kind of watch a man wears because it tells time, not because it tells strangers who he is. He turned it over. On the back, engraved in small letters, for the man who didn't raise his voice when every part of him wanted to. He looked at her across the table. He did not speak. He put the watch on. Most people who get treated the way Franklin and Janelle got treated at that door don't own the building. They don't have an Arthur on speed dial. They don't have a folder. They go home and they carry it. They carry it into the next restaurant, and the next store, and the next lobby, and the next elevator, and it gets heavier every time, and nobody ever asks them to set it down. The reason this story matters isn't that the rich black couple won. It's that what Hugh Brennan did to Franklin and Janelle that Friday night was exactly what he had been doing for years to every other black customer who walked up to that host stand. And the only difference that Friday was that one of those customers had the resources to make Tuesday morning hurt. Most don't. Most go home. So if you watched this and felt the heat rise when Hugh put his hand on Franklin's chest, if you felt good when the folder hit the table, that's a real feeling. Sit with it for a second. Then put it down. Because the people who change this country are not the billionaires who get embarrassed. They are the Gwens behind the bar, who say, "I should have spoken sooner." They are the customers who walk into a police station on a Tuesday to give a statement nobody asked them to give. They are the strangers who decide, quietly, that they are done being the 23 people sitting in the warm light, pretending nothing is happening. Drop it in the comments. Have you ever been in a restaurant, a hotel, a store, a lobby, and watched someone get treated like they didn't belong for the crime of showing up? Did you say something? Would you say something now? Hit like if you would. Hit subscribe because part 2 drops soon. What investigators found on Hugh Brennan's laptop after the arrest goes deeper than inflated invoices. The world doesn't change because the powerful get embarrassed. It changes because the rest of us decide we're not going to be the 23 people behind the glass anymore.